CEOs are asked about the big issues in business, leadership is often front and center. In fact, in an annual survey by Forbes, leadership is almost always the biggest talent issue, with only 14% of the companies saying that their leadership pipeline is in good shape. But as important as leadership is, it's been said that leadership is the most studied and least understood phenomenon in all of the social sciences. And why is that? So I think one of the most basic reasons is simply that when you and I talk about leadership, we're often referring to slightly different things. So across time and across cultures, leadership can vary in important ways. One of the reasons we have these different understandings is because leadership has taken on what I call a mythological significance, and it's especially true in Western individualistic cultures like Pakeha, New Zealand, Australia, the US, and the UK. And what that means is that we tend to overuse or overemphasize leadership as an explanation for success or failure. So presidents and prime ministers get all the blame or the credit for the economy, and coaches get sacked or idolized depending on how well the team does, when in fact there are much more complex explanations for why those successes or failures occur. And finally, a reason that we have misunderstandings is the commercialization of leadership. Because leadership is considered so significant, leadership sells. So if you look on Amazon, for example, and use the search term leadership, you'll find over 130,000 books written on the topic. And what sells is certainty and simplicity. So you get titles like the 21 Irrefutable Laws and the 5 Proven Steps and the 7 Habits. Because most readers don't want to read that. In fact, leadership's pretty complex, and what works in one situation doesn't necessarily work in another. So my approach is what is sometimes referred to as a discourse approach. And basically what that means is that as people interact with each other over time, they develop a shared understanding of leadership, what their expectations are for leadership, what it actually means. And then that guides what leaders are expected to do and what's interpreted as effective leadership. So what should employers do with all this? It's important not to assume we understand what other people believe about leadership. So the first thing I would recommend is really get to understand people's beliefs and values. Practice empathy so you can understand from their point of view, their expectations, their understandings about leadership. So following on from that, you have to be true to yourself, but at the same time adapt to people's understandings, adapt to their perspective. What language, what ways of framing goals and priorities will resonate with the particular group of people that you're working with? So the third thing that's important is to continually learn, continually stay in touch with people, because their understandings, their beliefs, their needs will change over time. So leadership is a big issue for business. Finding, developing, nurturing leadership talent is critical for the success of businesses. But if we're going to be effective, we need to understand that people have different beliefs, different needs, different understandings of leadership. We need to take that into account as we practice leadership in order to be effective.